And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Virus is raging while all the noise and all of the other stuff is going on, and we're going to get to the insanity that is Donald Trump and the Republican response to getting soundly whipped at the polls this election cycle. The virus numbers are continuing to grow. We're seeing infection rates much higher, 160, 170,000 people a day being infected. And the death numbers, as we've been saying, are going to continue to go up. In fact, Trump's own coronavirus task force said, hey, by Thanksgiving, we're going to have 1,500 people dying every day. By Christmas, possibly 2,000 a day. And as I've been saying, I've got a listener who his model is saying 3,000 people each and every single day by January 1st. So you look at, 4 days ago, 587 people died. 3 days ago, 713 people died. The day before yesterday, 1,408 people died, and yesterday 1,872 people yesterday alone died. And look, this is one of those things where we knew this was going to happen. Any sane, rational, logical thinking person knew this was coming. And the reason that Donald Trump lost the election and lost badly in places that he lost Georgia, man. He lost Arizona. He lost Nevada. The numbers are raging. And it's going to get worse because he's done nothing. All he's done recently is throw a temper tantrum. And we're watching the presidential temper tantrum, of which I hope, I got to tell you, I hope this is, I think legacy. Someone had asked me, would you ever want to be president? Having to deal with all of that stuff and being in the fishbowl. And my wife would tell you, absolutely not under any circumstances do I even want to visit the White House, let alone have to live in it. And I said, no, being the president is immortality. In 100 years, people are going to look back at this and what this administration stood for. And my hope is in that immortality that, generations from now, people look back and think Trump administration, they think impeachment, they think criminal, and they think crybaby. That's what I'm hoping the legacy, the immortal legacy of this administration is, because it is what they've done. And this temper tantrum, this what we're seeing right now, a serious problem. And I remember it's been years since my daughter asked me, who my favorite president was. They were learning about presidents in school. And, who's your favorite president, Dad? And I said, well, outside of FDR, because FDR brought us, tons of really progressive, solid working class legislation that built the most prosperous working class in the history of the civilized world. I said, it's got to be John Adams. And for no other reason. Look, Adams was a horrible president. The Alien and Sedition Acts were terrible. The joke was whenever he came to town, they fired off cannons to warn people that he was coming so they could get away. But when he lost, he left office. Now, he threw a little temper tantrum. He didn't go to the inauguration, and he left like a thief in the night, angry. And he and Jefferson, had their back and forth for, until the day they died, literally. But he left, setting the tone for what was every election after that. The very first, at least the first that I can find, the very first peaceful transfer of power to ideological differences, to people opposed to each other, without bloodshed. That is what makes this country exceptional. That's what is remarkable about this experience, is that we have replicated that time and time and time again. A listener sent me Obama's speech after Trump won back in 2016. Very eloquent, very forward-looking, very hopeful, saying, look, you may not like it, But this is going to be our president. We hope for his success. His analogy of being a relay runner is the exact right one. That whoever's in the White House is just running the next leg of the relay race. That is self-governance. And when you pass off the baton, you hope you've done a little bit better, and you hope you do a little bit better to help the next administration do better. Right now, not only has Donald Trump dropped the baton, he's bludgeoning the rest of us with it. Because here we're in the middle of this pandemic, and they are doing nothing. In our news media, I couldn't find a story on the number of deaths. I had to go seek it out. The fact that yesterday 1,872 people died is just mind-blowing, and we're moving towards that record day again. And in January, if my listener is right, and we have a 9/11 every single day for the month of January, this will be part of Trump's legacy. This is the part that I'm angry about. And look, we're going to spend a good portion of the rest of today's show talking about Michigan, talking about all the 30 frivolous lawsuits that he's lost, all of that insanity. But understand, while the temper tantrum is happening, there's so much else going on. For instance, new first-time jobless claims up again. 742,000 Americans filed first-time jobless claims. That's up 31,000 from the revised level of last week. They were expecting 710. There were also 320,237 pandemic unemployment assistance claims, also an increase from the week before. So we're seeing all of this stuff rising again. We're seeing all of the bad stuff happening, and Republicans are digging in. We're not going back. We're not wearing masks. We're not listening. And it's crazy to me. It's literally crazy to me that the people who used to tell me that they believed in family values, they were pro-life, they were fiscally responsible, that they were personally responsible, that they were the party of accountability, have lost their ever-loving freaking minds. All because of the sideshow that is the Trump show. And look, I think Obama is correct. I think the reason that the Republicans have partially correct, the reason that they've lost their minds is because they are intimidated by the bully. They're cowards and they won't stand up to the bully. I get that. But this is a moment to be true statesmen, to be true patriots. I know my Republican friends love to, wave the flag and tell us how patriotic they are and how courageous they are and how the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots, and they've got their slogans on their t-shirts and the hats and stuff. I wonder if they've actually read them. And that's what's just infuriating to me. And the fact that, every lawsuit that Trump has put forward has gone down. The fact that every one of these states are now saying, look, Georgia just officially said we recounted the ballots. We did the state hand recount, and Joe Biden won. Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by 12,284 votes. That is now certified. It's in the books. It's over. No more whining, no more complaining, no more, the voting machine fraud, no more of that stuff. It's over. But here's the thing, and this is the important part. And it's the old adage that you hear from lawyers. When the law's on your side, you argue the law. When the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. When neither the facts nor the law are on your side, you just pound your fist on the table and make a lot of noise. And what we're seeing right now with our presidential temper tantrum is just a lot of noise, is a lot of kicking and screaming and going on. But I would also argue some criminal behavior. The fact that Donald Trump reached out to these two Wayne County, Michigan elections canvassers, the fact that he's reached out to them, the fact that he's bringing legislators from Michigan to the White House tomorrow to strong arm them, to me is should be criminal. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the program, if it is, because I got to think it is. I got to think Lindsey Graham interjecting himself, the senator from South Carolina interjecting himself into Georgia and into Arizona, where I guess he claims Arizona and Nevada he called, but maybe they don't remember. Maybe he called and left a message on their voicemail. I don't know. But, this is crazy. And at some point, there's got to be someone who's going to hold them accountable, because at the end of all this, and I look at Michigan as a perfect example. 5.5 million people, record turnout in Michigan, cast their ballot. 3.5 million of them voted by absentee ballot. 3.3 million of them voted by absentee ballot. Now, we know the vast majority of those people were voting for Joe Biden, because the Democratic Party and all of the Democratic allies were saying, hey, don't put yourself at risk. Make sure that you vote by mail with a hand-marked paper ballot so that it can be recounted. That's not what they're calling for here. They're calling for them not to be recounted, but to be tossed. And the thing is, bottom line, Biden beat Trump by 150,000 votes in Michigan. That's a lot of people's votes to be thrown out just to get your way to throw Michigan out. And I got to hope that there are some of those patriots who are going to step forward, some of our Michigan friends who, they live in the upper part of the state, who are going to look at this and go, is this the guy that we're going to start the next civil war over? Someone who, when he loses, and he lost, there's no question about this, he lost Michigan, that he's going to throw this kind of a presidential temper tantrum. And it's something that's amazing. Now, understand, there were, on big scale, a view from 20,000 feet, there were no irregularities on Election Day in Michigan. There were no problems. There are always incidents, little things, because you're dealing with people. But there was nothing that you could point to that was systemic and go, see, they coordinated, they stole the election. Joe Biden and his team, while they were in the basement, were coordinating to steal the election, which is just insane. Because, look, I've had Trump supporters tell me this. And my response was very, very quick and very clear. If Joe Biden was that good at rigging the election, if he was that good at coordinating enough people to pull off this coup, if he was really that good at it and leave no fingerprints, do you think that's the guy we want taking over and kicking the viruses behind? I think so, because that's incredible if he can pull it off with no trace of any impropriety other than just, well, we think he did. But the other side of it is, if he actually did, let's argue he did. He wanted it for himself. Why would he give himself a divided Senate? Why wouldn't he have said, you know what, we could use a couple extra Senate seats. If we're going to rig it for ourselves, why don't we get those Senate seats that we need, so that we can actually get something done and not end up being mired in gridlock, in the kind of hostage situations that we know are coming back. The one thing that Mitch McConnell is going to do is he's going to make hostage crisis negotiating great again. We're going to hear a lot of ticking bombs. We're going to hear a lot of down to the wire. Oh, can't raise the debt ceiling. We're broke. We need austerity. We're going to hear tons of this stuff going forward. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist or a genius or politically clairvoyant to figure this out. It's what they did to Obama, and it's what they're going to do to Biden. No question about this. But going back to Michigan, the people of Michigan have spoken. They cast their ballots. They made a choice. And legally, he can't throw those votes out. He can't find a way to take those votes from people. He can't find a way to take their voice. There's no legal basis whatsoever. There's no factual basis whatsoever for him to do what he's doing. So what's he doing? When the facts aren't on your side, you argue the law. When the law's not on your side and the facts aren't on your side, you kick and scream and pound the table and you make a ton of noise, which is what we're doing. This election And I hate being the guy who goes, like Chris Krebs has said, this is the most, the fired Chris Krebs. This was the most secure election in this country's history. Was it perfect? No, by no means. Nothing is going to be perfect. But with as many eyes that were on this and as much scrutiny that was on this, and look, Trump had his patriots out there. All the Trump people were out there. They were ready. They were going to the polls expecting fraud. They wanted to catch something. In fact, I know a couple people who, they went because they were going to catch somebody and also get their 15 minutes of fame, and they were going to be somebody. So they were going to catch somebody, and then we're going to be somebody. And they didn't find anything. What they found is election day is kind of boring. People come in, they cast their ballot, they leave. Next guy comes in, does the same thing, and then the next, and then the next. And it's a long day. It's a lot of people. 160 million people cast their ballot on election day. Look, you can't get 5 people on the street to agree the sky is blue on a beautiful sunny day, let alone get them to go, oh yeah, I'm gonna do something fraudulent. Now, do we have problems with our voting machines? Oh yeah, I hate voting machines. Hated them for the longest time. We should not have anything close to a voting machine. We should have hand-marked paper ballots. That simple. Which is why, again, I go back to, I liked the way I voted. Got the paper ballot in the mail, had my name on it, had my voter ID number on it. I filled it out with a black pen. Actually, first it was blue, and then I went over it with black. I put it back in the secret envelope because we don't want anybody to know who I voted for. And just so you know, I voted for all Democrats because there were no Republicans on the ballot that I can ballot at this moment. I'm hoping there are some someday. But I voted for all Democrats. I have no shame in saying that. I voted for Joe Biden. And I'm proud of that. I put it back in the travel envelope, signed it, my name, and dropped it off in the election box at the Department of Elections at our county. They sent me an email the next day, said, hey, we got it. And it was kind of anticlimactic, but they got my vote. A hand-marked paper ballot. That's what we should be doing. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1863. That was the day President Abraham Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. It is considered one of Lincoln's greatest speeches. Generations of students have been assigned to commit it to memory. The 2-minute speech carries a deep significance to our country's history. Lincoln delivered the speech at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. 4 months earlier, the Union had defeated Confederate forces at the Battle of Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. Casualties on both sides totaled nearly 50,000 over the course of the 3-day battle. This battle, coupled with the fall of Vicksburg, is often considered the turning point in the war to end the slave labor system. Lincoln's speech served to redefine the war's purpose. Originally, the emphasis had been one of preserving the Union. Now, Lincoln drew upon the Declaration of Independence to also highlight the national struggle for human equality. Lincoln began his speech with the acknowledgement that the nation was dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He ended the Gettysburg Address stating, "This nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth." Most Republicans praised the speech, but historian Eric Foner notes in his biography of Lincoln that many Democrats denounced Lincoln for unilaterally redefining the war's purpose, which they insisted had nothing to do with equality. In 2015, the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Foundation published an edited volume, Gettysburg Replies. It features 272 word essays by presidents, historians, poets, actors, scientists, and others about the lasting influence of the Gettysburg Address. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like from news reports, Trump has withdrawn the last lawsuit there in Michigan. And like I said, when the law's not on your side, the facts aren't on your side, just make a ton of noise, which is exactly what they're doing. Also, it's been reported that the Michigan Secretary of State says, hey, every county has certified the election. It's over. There's no going back. There's no, oops, we had our fingers crossed and behind our back. It's over. It's done with. But that's not going to stop Trump from kicking and screaming and carrying on. And here to share some thoughts on what's going on in the state of Michigan, I've asked Sam Inglet to come talk with us. He's the Deputy Director of Progress Michigan. Sam, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So am I getting this right? The Secretary of State said, look, it's certified. It's over. There's nothing here.
Look, yeah, that's what the Secretary of State said, and more importantly, that's what the people of Michigan said. I mean, it turned out in record numbers, historic voter turnout. Voters decided. They made a clear choice for Joe Biden for president, Gary Peters for Senate, and the folks in Michigan are ready to move forward. We're tired of the partisan games. We're tired of this right-wing power grab that's being attempted, and folks are ready to defend our democracy.
Now, you've got a couple of legislators, evidently, that are heading to the White House on Friday. I got to think that there's some strong arming that's going to be going on because the end game, and it's been open for a while since Trump, let it out that, if the House of Representatives gets the vote, we've got the votes. It's got to be we're moving towards trying to strong arm enough legislators to just basically set aside the popular vote or the vote of people in states like Michigan, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of strong arming, and Trump, definitely making his influence known. Between him summoning Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey and House Speaker Lee Chatfield to the White House tomorrow, to him calling the Wayne County Board of Canvassers and essentially, strong arming them to reverse their decision to certify votes there as well. We're seeing Trump's, his temper tantrum in full force here in Michigan. But across communities, across the state, folks are organized. Folks are ready to fight back because, again, we made a clear choice. Voters decided. Yeah. We chose a new path for Michigan, and we're not going to let Trump bully his way into power.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 150,000 votes. Biden beat Trump by. I mean, that's a pretty sizable margin, at least in my view, considering what the margin was in 2016.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it was a decisive victory. I mean, it's a solid 3%, and that means a lot of things too, right? I mean, because this isn't just a horse race between two candidates. This impacts issues that affect Michigan families every single day: access to health care, clean water, public education. These are the things that people made a clear choice on, and they rejected 4 more years of Donald Trump and chose 4 years of Joe Biden. And so, we're working hard across the state to make sure that the will of the people is respected, because that, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here. And Republicans can try to pull as many, loopholes and partisan power grabs and put on political theater as much as they want, but folks are organized, folks are motivated, and we're ready to move forward and build a better future for Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some conversations with some of my fellow white working class voters who voted for Trump. I know a bunch of folks who are Trump supporters, and one of the things that they like about Trump is he's a fighter. The frame of even if he's behind, he's still going to scrap, he's still going to fight, and it's been one of the knocks against Democrats because Hillary could have easily thrown a temper tantrum about Michigan, but she chose to go nope. The people have spoken, and moved forward. Do you see this playing out in Michigan as because there's a massive divide between rural and urban communities, especially when you're talking about the white working class male. This seems to be perfectly tailored for them and the anger that they exude. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I'd love to talk about that rural and urban divide a little bit because we've been working with a coalition of organizations really since before Election Day, the We Make Michigan Coalition. It's made up of grassroots organizations, faith congregations, community groups, labor unions, and we have had events in urban cores like Detroit and Lansing and Grand Rapids, but we've had rallies to count every vote and defend democracy in places like Traverse City, Hancock, which is way up in the Keweenaw in northern Michigan. So, across communities, rural and urban, we've seen unity. We've seen togetherness. We've seen a desire to march forward. And what Trump is trying to do and what his allies are trying to do is sow chaos and division and try to undermine our election processes, our election officials, and cast doubts on our votes, on Michigan's election, on the people's vote. And so we've seen unity across the state. We're not going to let Trump divide us. So they can have their committee hearings. They can sign their affidavits trying to rescind, their votes after they've done them. Mike Shirkey and Lee Chatfield can go to Washington, D.C., but you can be sure as heck that we're going to hold them accountable for those actions. We're going to stay united. We're not going to let them divide us. And we're focused on moving forward as a state because we've got way too many issues here that we need to be working on, from COVID-19 to protecting our Great Lakes to making sure people got access to health care. That's what the people want focus on. That's where we want resources spent. And we're going to be unified, and we're going to be pushing back against any of this right-wing power grab, regardless of where it's coming from.
No, I mean, that's right in line with what I've been saying. We've got work to do. We don't have time for temper tantrums. The numbers of virus deaths, spiked again today. Over 1,800 people died yesterday from the virus. Over 160,000 people, new infections happened. We had 734 new first-time unemployment claims. There's a lot of work to be done, and what we're focusing on is this temper tantrum. So for me, I'm looking at this as a potential opportunity to bridge that gap between the rural and urban communities and maybe get them to start going, hey, we've got more in common than we don't. And it starts with, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, whether you live in a big city or a small town, an apartment building, a trailer park, wherever, you need clean drinking water. You want clean air for your kids to breathe when they're outside playing. You want folks to be able to go to a good public school, drive on good roads that don't bang your car to heck. And those are the issues that drove historic turnout, right? And thanks to expanded voting options in Michigan, we saw, like you talked about earlier in your show, a lot of folks voting by absentee, a lot of folks voting early, and it was, those issues, the things that people care about, the things that they hold dear, that impact their families. That's what brings people to the ballot box, whether that's in person or at the mailbox outside of their house. So that's where we can unify as a country, as a state. And we're not going to let Trump, try to divide us by, across geographies or across race. And frankly, that's been a big thing of what they've been trying to do in Michigan is disenfranchise black voters and using a lot of racist tropes and stereotypes to try to undermine the will of the people. But folks here are unified. There's a lot of energy. There's punches coming in from every angle, but we're taking them. We're punching back, and we're not going to stop fighting until we deliver our democracy to the people.
And for me, this is what has to happen, right, for the Democratic Party and for people of conscience to step up and say, this isn't this isn't right, it's not fair, and we're going to fight back. Because it would be easy to, one of the knocks I've been hearing about people about Joe Biden is, well, he's not out there swinging, he's not out there doing enough. And I say, well, I think he's just going to give Trump enough rope to hang himself, because eventually I think we're, as a country, going to tire of this sideshow that we're seeing right now, especially as the virus numbers continue to get larger and larger, and unemployment numbers start to tick back up again. But I'm hoping that's part of it. But I think Biden has pushed back in a very presidential way, in a very mature way, and not himself throwing a temper tantrum.
Yeah, no, it's from the bull in a china shop mentality, which I wouldn't even call him, but more like a petulant 8-year-old in a china shop is more like it, from Trump to the sort of calming, unifying presence that Joe Biden has brought and spoke to. I think speaks to what a lot of people are looking for. People are tired. They're tired of the games. They're tired of the division, and that's coming from Donald Trump, and that's by design. He is trying to, and he's been doing this for months, right? This is not his rhetoric around casting doubts about our votes and our elections didn't start after Election Day. He was talking about this since the beginning of this year. As soon as we got into this election season, he started sowing doubts about our democracy.
No, he's been doing this. If I can correct you, he's been doing this since 2015. He was laying the "they're going to steal this from me" for the 2016 election. This is all just remnants of back then. So I wasn't surprised that when he lost, and we knew he was going to lose, and he lost pretty big, 306 to 232, pretty sizable defeat. You knew he was going to fall back on those 2015 claims.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing that we, not that we're losing sight of, it's just there's so much noise and so much static right now. In Michigan this year, we had an unprecedented level of voter engagement and voter education because of the expanded voting options and freedoms that we got in state from Proposal 3. There was just an unprecedented amount of work in this state to educate voters about their new rights. And it was clear that between people exercising their freedom to vote and the turnout at the ballot box, people didn't buy into Trump's lies. And that's why he lost. And voters decided Trump lost. We're ready to move forward. We don't want the division anymore because, again, there's just too much at stake right now that our communities and our families are dealing with to go on with this temper tantrum anymore.
No, I'm with you. Now, you talked a little bit about expanding voting rights, and something I've been calling for decades now. The idea that the more options that we have, the more points of contact where we can cast our ballot, the more people are going to actually do that. And we saw a record turnout. I mean, it was 160 million people actually cast their ballots this time around. A record number of people. Joe Biden got a record number of votes. Had a record number of votes more than his opponent. I mean, this was a historic election, and I think it's because we had options, and it wasn't just, hey, you got to show up on Tuesday between that window and cast your ballot. We had other options.
Yeah, we did. I mean, and that's something that the left really, I think, should start to reclaim the concept of freedom from the right in a lot of ways, because at every turn when we were saying, hey, we want to give people voting options, we want people to have freedom to choose how they cast their ballot, we were fought by the right at every single turn. And people use that freedom to, again, we talk so much about Trump, but there are so many issues at play here in Michigan and across the country that people took that expanded freedom, took the choices that they had, and acted on those issues that are impacting them. We've got a pipeline running under the Great Lakes here in Michigan, Line 5. When we want to get that shut down. We've got folks who can't drink their water in a lot of places because of PFAS and lead contamination. Folks facing water shutoffs, problems with access to health care. And then, you got to talk about Michigan. Our worst export has been Betsy DeVos and what she has done to public education. And I think, again, those were the reasons that people showed up to the ballot box and having those expanded voting options, especially during a pandemic when people want to be safe. And we have our Republican leadership here in Michigan doing jack squat about it. People were able to vote safely from home. So that's what we saw this election. And, like I keep saying it, folks are ready to move forward. But as long as the Republicans want to keep trying to play games, we're going to continue to fight back in the state.
No, I'm hopeful because, look, Michigan is a lot like Pennsylvania. It's the same kind of division lines that the Republicans have used for, from the beginning of time, where you've got Detroit, we've got Philadelphia. Wisconsin's the same thing. It's Milwaukee and Madison. Georgia the same thing. It's Atlanta. It's the same attacks, just moved from state to state. And at some point, I'm hoping that we can heal those divides, find some common ground, some common direction, and move in that direction. Because as I've been saying, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that we do. And from here in Michigan, it's been really impressive to see the level of engagement from folks. From what we saw at the Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting with, where it was, let's be very clear about what happened there, where you had two Republican commissioners, white commissioners, attempting to disenfranchise the largest majority black city in the country. They wanted to try to certify Wayne County's votes, but exclude Detroit, which is 85% black. And I got to tell you, there was, most of these Board of Canvassers meetings, these election meetings are pretty, dry toast affair.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can say it.
But man, I got to tell you, it was awe-inspiring to see what folks from Detroit and Wayne County stepped up, how they stepped up at that meeting. Because the commissioners refused to certify, which would just put us into, it would bump it up to the State Board of Canvassers, which is a whole nother can of worms. But people waited for hours on a Zoom call to be able to give public comment, and they lambasted them. They took them to the carpet, calling it exactly what it was: a racist attempt to try to disenfranchise black voters in Detroit, pit white communities against black communities, and sow more division. And people let them have it, and they let them know, you need to change this. This is wrong. You are being racist. You are disenfranchising people. You are ignoring the will of the people. And after that lambasting, after the community stood up, spoke out, and again, what should have just been a very process-oriented meeting, they came back and changed their votes and decided to certify. And they were the last county that needed to certify, which brought all 83 counties to certification. And that, unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented, the level of engagement at that level of this process. And we've seen that from before the election, when we were demanding that every vote be counted, and there were rallies happening in cities, big and small across the state, to demanding that the will of the people be respected in the days following. It's been unprecedented in Michigan. It's tough. There's a lot of challenges, but the people of Michigan are up to it.
There you go. Good stuff. And now it's over. It's been certified. Trump is officially lost. We can move forward. Sam, I appreciate your time and your thoughts. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate you having me on.
Good stuff. Sam Inglett, Deputy Director of Progress Michigan. Make sure you check out their work. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day that federal agents stormed the offices of the industrial workers of the world in New York City. They were looking for evidence connecting the organization to radical communists or anarchists. The ransacked office was part of the infamous Palmer raids, when Attorney General Alexander Palmer responded to the growing Red Scare hysteria by raiding the offices of leftist organizations and arresting thousands. Hundreds of immigrants to the United States were deported during the raids without legal due process. The 1917 Russian Revolution had stoked fears about a spreading communist threat. Newspaper headlines helped to drum up public panic. A week before the IWW raid, a headline on the front page of the Evening World, published in New York City, declared, "Reds in U.S. plotted revolution, deportation for all radicals." The day after the IWW raid, a Washington Post headline read, "Law to crush Reds." Writing in 1920, Attorney General Palmer warned, quote, "The chief appeal communism makes is to the worker. If they can lure the wage earner to join their own gang of thieves, if they can show him that he will be rich if he steals, so far they have succeeded in betraying him to their own criminal course." Palmer went on to describe how communists had, quote, "stirred discontent, caused irritating strikes, and infected our social ideas with the disease of their own minds and their unclean morals." Palmer's references to workers and irritating strikes demonstrate that he perceived the labor movement as part of the communist threat. Anti-communist hysteria took its toll on the most radical elements of the U.S. labor movement, especially the IWW.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the funny video today was Rudy Giuliani. Oh, man, how far America's mayor has fallen. Had the hair thing going on. Anybody not know that Rudy dyes his hair? I mean, when you're that old, I mean, clearly you're not going to have the color hair he's got. But as I was watching it, I'm going, that's probably why you shouldn't have gotten your hair dyed at the lawn care shop. Just kind of throwing that out there. Maybe next time. But what we're watching really is political theater, because as I've been saying, the whole, if the facts aren't on your side, argue the law. If the law's not on your side, argue the facts. If nothing's on your side, just make a ton of noise. And it's what we're seeing, a ton of noise, because after all, Trump has lost, at least as my count goes, 30 frivolous lawsuits. And I'm sure there are more to come. And here to share some thoughts on the frivolous lawsuits and the, strong arming in Michigan, I've asked our good friend Renato Mariotti to come talk with us, former federal prosecutor and host of the On Topic podcast. Renato, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime.
So let's start with the frivolous lawsuits. At this point, maybe you've got a better number. I'm counting 30 of these lawsuits across the country that have been tossed, many of them by Trump appointees. So the law clearly not on his side.
Well, absolutely. And the facts are not on his side as well. And that's the biggest problem that Trump has had here, is that the margins are so big for Biden in these states. And there's so many states that he'd need to flip. I mean, we're not talking about the year 2000, where the result of one state would make a difference, and you only had 500-something votes to flip. Here, he's trying to invalidate the votes of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in multiple states across the country.
No, and look, we knew a while ago, before the election, that the emergency plan was to try and get it either to the House of Representatives or to the Supreme Court. There just doesn't seem to be a path for that. But when I look at Trump, calling these local election officials, and when I look at Trump bringing, legislators from Michigan to the White House, in really a blatant attempt to strong arm. I gotta go. There's got to be something of impropriety, something legal here that protects we the people from this kind of stuff.
One thing. This is going to be one of those things I think people will be upset is not a crime that's spelled out in our criminal code, because frankly, the people who've written our criminal code do not anticipate a president trying to undermine democracy. And I think one thing that should be disturbing to everyone is that we technically, while we have a practice in this country that states award their electors based on popular vote, and thankfully, states can't change their basis for awarding their electors after an election. So there's no do-overs here. We do have to be concerned in the future about potential of states changing the way they award their electoral votes. And I also just have to say that while Trump is not going to be successful this year, I think we all have to be concerned for future elections that the Republicans might try to steal.
No.
And that's why we need to make sure we change the law going forward.
No, you're absolutely spot on. And this is one of those things that, as I've said about a lot of stuff, Republicans spend a lot of money paying a lot of really smart people to find every legal loophole possible. They've got think tanks all across this country, a state policy network that's funded second to none. And all these people do is sit around and dream up how to usurp democracy and how to undo the will of the people, and for them to get more. And this, to me, is another one of those things that it's been in the back of it's been in the playbook, but way in the back, and now it's bubbling to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all should be grateful that on this particular attempt to subvert democracy, the best and brightest of the conservative legal movement are not involved. I don't think you need to be a lawyer or familiar with the legal system to watch that performance today by Trump's elite crack legal squad to know that they're a bunch of buffoons who really are either past their prime or never had one.
Yeah, but here's the thing: I look at Rudy Giuliani, and I'm like, Rudy, you were America's mayor, you were the slayer of the mob, and yet here you are, basically being the mob's lawyer, and a bad one.
Yeah. I will tell you, I was on set one time at CNN with Rudy Giuliani, and I really was shocked at that time because he was representing the president at the time during the Mueller investigation, and it was clear that he was just winging it. He wasn't prepared at all, didn't know any of the facts or even have his talking points straight. My partners at my law firm, if they were on local television about a small-time case, they'd have binders and tabs and, practice the night before. I mean, Rudy just is winging it. And I think we're seeing more of that here where he's just talking off the top of his head. I mean, if you thought his performance today was bad, you should have seen his performance in front of the judge the other day. It was laughable.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't know what his own complaint alleged, didn't know the basics that a first-year law student would know about the law. Very, very, very pathetic.
Opacity.
Yeah. Well, and also just every lawyer knows different levels of scrutiny that apply. And for him to tell the judge is asking him what level of scrutiny applies to this, and he says normal scrutiny, which is not one of the choices. It was bizarre. I mean, it's the sort of thing that if a first-year lawyer at my law firm did something like that, I would just be shaking my head and wonder whether or not this person would make it. It's sad in a way. It's funny in another way, but really none of this is a joke.
Right.
Because these people are trying their best. Fortunately, their best isn't good enough, but they're trying their best to essentially invalidate the votes of millions of people. And the judge the other day in Pennsylvania, I think, put it very well. He said, you're alleging that these two individuals in this case had some problems with their votes, and you seek to invalidate the votes of every person in Pennsylvania. How could this possibly compel that result? And of course, any obvious person would know that's right. We're not going to take away the right of every person in Pennsylvania to be heard based on some small case like this. But that's what they're trying to do, and it's dangerous in its own way.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that they would bring this and even argue it in public tells me that we're in a very bizarre world. And you for a moment ago, you said that Rudy wasn't prepared, and clearly they're not. It's because they make up their own facts, because we've now become accustomed, and I'm sure you know this as well as anyone, Renato, that we now have two sets of what are facts. We have what we believe on either side, and well, the facts be damned, because it's what we believe.
Yeah, I will tell you, Rick, I have some family members of mine who have been deceived by this disinformation. They watch Fox News and listen to a lot of the right-wing radio stations, and it's sad. I will tell you, my father is a cashier at Walmart and won't wear a mask. He wouldn't do it until the store forced him because he believed that the virus was a hoax. Now, these people are endangering the lives of good. There's a lot of good people who've been deceived by these people. They should be ashamed of themselves, what they're doing to this country. We now have a very substantial percentage of this country that believes that the president-elect is illegitimate and won illegitimately. It's a damage to this country that all of us are going to have to work very hard to overcome. It's a tragedy.
No, you're right.
And a disgrace.
And the thing that gets me is, and I've been talking about this for a while, that had Trump come out in January, beginning of February, and said, hey, we don't know what this virus is. Blame China all he can. But I'm told the best way to help protect ourselves is, wear the mask, socially distance, wash your hands. And I'm calling on my patriots. to put on a mask and force everyone around us to do this. Had he done something that simple instead of diminishing it and claiming it'll be gone in no time and the sunshine and Clorox or whatever, he would have won re-election in a landslide. But he chose a different path, and here's where we are. And now the path is, how do we undermine our democracy? But here's the thing. I expect that from Trump. My problem is with the rest of the Republican Party. Where are the so-called patriots who water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots? Where are they? I look at someone like Lindsey Graham, who I think there should be something more than Senate ethics charges for what he has done. There should be some bit of holding him accountable for interjecting himself into other states' processes. But there don't seem to be any of those patriots left.
Yeah, I have to say, a Democratic member of Congress told me this week that all of the Republican members are saying that Trump's going to run again in 2024, and it was clear to him that they're all sort of enthralled. Their supporters, their base, all follow Trump, believe Trump, support Trump, and they're very afraid of crossing the man. And I have to say, it was disappointing for me to hear, Rick, because I really was hoping that Trump, we could finally get him out of our lives and we could start focusing, get back to some sense of normalcy in this country and start repairing the damage he did. But if we have to deal with him being a shadow president and keeping the Republicans, as you say, essentially they're really complicit in his wrongdoing, that's going to be more difficult than it should be for President-elect Biden to repair this damage.
Now you were a former federal prosecutor. There are people on both sides who are saying, once Trump leaves office, they believe the Southern District of New York is going to, charge him with stuff. They believe that there are going to be all these investigations. Do you see any chance that the next attorney general, goes after Trump for the last 4 years, or do you see it as just another, as we did, in 2009, not going after as many bankers as Clinton did with H.W. Bush and the Reagan era, just going, hey, it's let dead dogs lie. Do you see that going forward, or do you actually see any potential prosecution for this administration?
That's a great question. I will say that I think that there's certainly going to be state prosecutions. We could partly, you have elected officials in Manhattan, the new Manhattan DA by that time, and the New York Attorney General, who are eager to move forward with this. But I think on the federal side, if it was up to Joe Biden and you gave him a truth serum, I think he would not want to go that route because it would create a lot of division, and he wants to move and focus forward and focus on his own agenda. But as you point out, really, the choice would be up to his attorney general. And, I recently wrote a column arguing that really a special counsel should be appointed. And I think the Biden administration is in a bit of a trick bag because if they don't do something about this, Trump is going to be seen as above the law. And all of us are going to be outraged about that, rightfully so. On the other side, of course, he has to make sure that any prosecution is free of political influence. He's going to be accused no matter what he does by the Fox News types. And so I think there's a needle to be thread here. I will just say that I think certainly on obstruction of justice, at the very least, there should be charges brought. But that's going to, be up to the new attorney general. Yeah.
But ultimately, as you pointed out, and accurately so, it's going to be viewed as political prosecution, even if, and I agree with you. I don't think Biden wants anything to do with it. And I think he wants to put it behind him. As I think every administration wants to. That's in the past. We're looking forward. We've got work to do because the reality is we got a lot of work to do. Falling down the rabbit hole of holding Trump accountable for all of his crimes will take away from the fact that we have a virus that's raging thanks to our super spreader in chief right now. We have an economy that's struggling. We've got all kinds of infrastructure needs. And oh, by the way, we're still getting our butts kicked by China and abroad. So we got a lot of stuff to do. He's a major distraction.
I think that that's absolutely right. And it's frustrating because earlier you talked about a pandemic. Our economy is in a difficult spot. There's a lot of people who are out of jobs right now. There's a lot of people who have health care issues to deal with right now. We have so many problems in this country, and many of them, of course, caused by Trump. People who are suffering throughout, due to his actions over the last 4 years. We really need to heal as a country, repair, and move forward. And we're here talking about attempts to steal the election and other assorted chicanery, which is unfortunate.
No, I mean, this is the thing that gets me is, yesterday, over 1,800 people died from the virus, and I had a hard time finding that in the news. I did not have a hard time finding anything about the Trump show, which is just a giant pile of, steaming, what, at this point. But we're so focused on the train wreck that our real problems are being masked. The fact that, again, 742,000 people filed first-time unemployment claims last week. They're just the oxygen that he pulls out of the room, I think is hurting us long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am looking forward to the day, which hopefully will be soon, where he will be much more irrelevant than he is right now. And let's just hope for the good of this country that we are able to have this transition in some sort of orderly fashion by January 20th, so the country we can all take his notifications off of our Twitter feeds, and we can all start talking about all these people who are sick and dying in this country and out of work and everything else.
There you go. Last question I got for you real quick. I wanted to go back to the Lindsey Graham thing because, I'm sure it was the most perfect call ever when he called the Georgia Secretary of State. I wanted to get your thoughts as a federal prosecutor. And looking at this, does a senator from South Carolina have any business calling the Secretary of State from Georgia talking about the election, or supposedly claims he called Arizona and I guess Nevada as well? Is there anything? Do you see anything wrong with that? Is there anything illegal? Anything you could go, hey, it wasn't a perfect phone call?
Well, look, it wasn't a perfect phone call, and it is a very foolish idea. He really stuck his neck out there, and it's not clear why. He just won re-election. He doesn't need to be sticking his neck out there for Trump and getting in the weeds with the Secretary of State of Georgia and pressuring him. So I will say it was a very foolish move by Lindsey Graham. That said, I don't know how many people were on the call, but it's probably going to be a he said as to what happened, and they're going to have differing accounts of that. I don't think he'll be prosecuted for what he said, but he really has shown, I think, his colors here. By even after winning re-election, I think a lot of us thought he was acting this way just to get re-elected. Now that he has, it seems like it's more of the same from Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, evidently there was an ethics claim filed by Walter Schaub with the Senate Select Committee on Ethics on Wednesday. So we'll see. Maybe there's some hope there. Don't know. But Renato, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, good stuff, and appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thanks again.
Good stuff, Renato Mariotti. Make sure you check out his podcast, the On Topic podcast. Outstanding stuff. But look, I mean, the end of this is, and Renato's right. We're in this moment where hopefully we get past what has been the sideshow of the last 4 years and really get to work, because ultimately we've got a ton of cleaning up to do. We've got a ton of rolling up the sleeves and cleaning up the mess that's been left behind. And as I've been saying, look, this virus ain't going away. As much as the people are saying, it's a hoax, and after Election Day it's just going to go away, it hasn't. And the fact that I'm literally shocked that Renato would say, my father works at Walmart, and he wouldn't wear a mask because he believed Trump. And I got to wonder how many of those people, those 1,800 plus who died, believed the same thing. Scary and sad and just horrible. Gonna take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. On that sad day, industrial workers of the world organizer and songwriter, Swedish-born Joe Hill, was executed in Utah. In 1914, Hill was framed for the murder of a grocer and his son in Salt Lake City. The evidence was circumstantial at best. Hill was found guilty of the murders, even though no witness could identify him conclusively. The gun used in the murders was never recovered. And today, tied to a white kitchen chair, Joe Hill was executed by firing squad. Prior to his death, Hill requested that his ashes be mailed to IWW locals in every state except Utah. He also sent a now famous message to IWW organizer Big Bill Haywood, in which he wrote, "Don't waste any time mourning, organize." A century after his death, Joe Hill's inspiring charge is still printed on buttons and t-shirts worn by many labor leaders and union members. Many of Joe Hill's famous songs were set to the music of Christian hymns and popular tunes of the day, including The Preacher and the Slave, Casey Jones, and The Rebel Girl. Perhaps his most famous song, There Is Power in the Union, included the lyrics, there is power in a band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's a power that must rule in every land, one industrial union grand. Labor music provides the spirit of the labor movement, and Joe Hill was one of its great troubadours. Take time today to listen to your favorite labor song in honor of Joe Hill.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, live with you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Remember when candidate Trump promised not only to wall out all migrants crossing our Mexican border, but also to make Mexico pay for his xenophobic wall? Well, Mexico hasn't paid a peso and won't. So he keeps running to Congress demanding that it pony up unlimited billions of our tax dollars for his pet political project. Aside from one token appropriation, however, Congress has said, no. But that's no hill for a narcissistic climber. Unable to get tax money legitimately, Trump has simply stolen it, taking money from the U.S. military budget. Ignoring the constitutional mandate that only Congress is empowered to control the flow of government money, Trump filched $6.1 billion from our military last year, snatched another $3.8 billion this month, and intends to swipe at least another $3.4 billion before the year is out. This executive reprogramming, as the White House euphemistically calls its daylight robbery, is being pulled off by masking Trump's wall obsession as a, quote, national emergency. The Pentagon brass has been yanking funds meant for the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, National Guard, and ultimately from our fighting forces. This is Jim Hightower saying, presidential autocracy aside, Trump's massive larceny raises three other interesting issues of public morality. One, his trickery sets a precedent, not only for future presidents, but also for our young people's behavior. Two, our Congress critters, especially Trump Republicans, are setting a new standard of craven meekness in the face of this direct executive assault on their authority and on our democracy. And three, by simply kissing off a budget loss of more than $13 billion, saying it's in excess of the military's needs, the Pentagon is admitting that the war machine is routinely taking way too much of the public's money.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we've been talking about the fact that Trump strong-arming the elections people there in Wayne County, Michigan. Also gonna wine and dine some of the legislators to try and undo the will of the people there in Michigan. But today was my favorite Trump tweet in a while because they had pulled out, they'd stopped another lawsuit. I guess they didn't want to lose another lawsuit because they're 30 frivolous lawsuits to 0 at this point. He tweeted out, "We withdrew because we won," and I'm what? Well, here to answer what, I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. She's a fabulous reporter over at the website Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
He won. So he won Michigan, evidently.
So, It's 30-1. There was one lawsuit that he won. That was the one in Pennsylvania where he said that he wanted his people to be able to stand closer to the tables. And the court said, sure.
Okay.
So in the other 30 lawsuits that have actually been about votes and voter fraud, that's not really fraud, those he's lost badly. And my favorite was today the 3.5-hour recording of one of the proceedings that Rudy Giuliani did on Tuesday. Tuesday? Yes. And that is glorious. That is a beautiful thing to listen to. It is very strange, and it makes me very uncomfortable. I did mock trial in high school, and we had some really incredible attorneys who were our advisors, and we won state. And so we got some of the state Supreme Court members went with us to nationals. And so like there's a reverence in a courtroom. There's a whole procedure thing. Like it's very ceremonial. Rudy doesn't act that way. He's a little bit off the deep end.
Yeah. I keep, every time I see him, I go, Rudy, dude, what's wrong with you? I mean, today he was, what was it? Today he was leaking. What the hell was that?
It reminded me I need to color my hair this weekend.
I go, this is why you don't go to a lawnmower shop to get your hair dyed.
Well, I've seen before, there's a commercial where you can get like this spray color stuff. So like if you want to spray your roots, I guess that's the thing. So I'm wondering if that's what he did, if he just like did some spray stuff around the temples, but he's such a sweater that he just, it drips and you're like, oh, honey.
Yeah. I saw him. I thought he was leaking. I thought, there are those who don't think he's human anyway. I thought it was oil.
Maybe. Bless his heart.
Oh, if he's got one.
He needs a handler. He needs a nice gay boy to follow him around and go, not that. Let's fix this.
Would he lay back? No, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go to the bedroom scene from Borat. He was tucking in his shirt. That's all he was doing, because all of us lay down on the bed to tuck in our shirt.
I mean, after COVID, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have to lay down on the bed to button their pants. This is why people should be wearing yoga pants all the time. This is ridiculous. Why are you wearing pants in the pandemic?
There you go. But opacity.
Oh God, he doesn't know what opacity means.
$20,000 a day. Remember, he's charging the campaign $20,000 a day and doesn't know what opacity is. And look, I'm a dumb truck driver and I know what it is.
Oh my God. Yes, $20,000 a day. Trump didn't get his money's worth. For $20,000 a day, I would humiliate myself in front of a courtroom. But I would still know what opacity meant.
Yeah, did he get his money's worth? Because look, I'm going back to the porn star, $140,000. He seems to overpay for a lot of services.
Yeah, paying Giuliani, he got screwed in a different way. So, for $20,000 than he did the porn stars. That
went south, literally. Sorry. Let's move on. Yeah. So, I mean, really, I need a good laugh, because if I look at what this guy has done over the last 4 years and what he's doing right now, ripping this country apart shred by shred and really dividing us even further on the fault lines. I mean, that Jay Gould quote has never been more relevant than it is today, that I could easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. I mean, we're seeing this should be what's on Trump's gravestone, because this is exactly what he's doing in pitting us against one another, because this is very tactical. It's very surgical, and we're just going to go after those cities: Detroit, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Atlanta, those cities.
Yeah, which is funny because he talked so big about, the getting African Americans to vote for him, and he actually did pretty well among Black men, but now he doesn't want to count those votes. So It's just I'm not surprised by anything anymore. I did quit following him on Twitter. I heard Renata say that, you know, the highlight of his life will be whenever he gets to unfollow him on Twitter and take him off of notifications. And I just sort of reached that point where I was like, you know what? I'm done with you. Unfollow.
I could be one of the only people that you'll probably know who I never followed him. I
had to monitor the idiot, for work. And
no, I'll go and check it out. I will make the deliberate choice that I'm going to go look at his Twitter feed and I will read it. And I do it, every day or so. But I don't want those notifications popping up at me going, hey, look what this idiot said now. I just said, I'm not going to put myself through that. I will choose when I engage in insanity, and I never followed him.
Good for you.
I have made that conscious choice. Let's move along.
You deserve that, though. I mean, you work a lot of hours, and you work very hard, and do a lot of picket lines. So you deserve to only consume Trump when you won.
Why, thank you. Let's talk conspiracy theory. There are a bunch of favorite ones out there, but I think my most recent favorite is this story about evidently Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez has created the electronic voting machine to steal the election from Donald Trump. Hasn't Chavez been dead for like 7 years?
Yes, he died in 2013, which, if you're counting at home, that's 2 years before Trump declared that he was running for office. The company, I mean, there's been 11 billion publications that have done the research on this. It's the conspiracy is this back way of being like, this company owns a company that owns a company that somehow was started by Chavez more than 7 years ago so he could win an election, and none of it's true. It's so ridiculously, if you're gonna make a conspiracy theory, make a good one. Like, this isn't even close.
At least have a kernel of fact.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's how you make a really good conspiracy theory, is you have a tiny bit of truth in it. And Sidney Powell clearly has not learned that tactic when creating conspiracy theories, because when she got up there today and said, Hugo Chavez is trying to beat Donald Trump in this election, I was like, is he really? Really? Is he, Sidney?
No, maybe the Hugo Chavez he's talking about is the guy who owns the Four Seasons lawn care company there that they had their press conference at.
Maybe it's a regular everyday guy who lives in Philadelphia who's a pro-Biden guy who was like, yeah, my name is Hugo Chavez and I like Biden. I didn't create any voting systems, but maybe that's what it is.
Now here's where I'm at. So, I'm in this weird spot, Sarah, because I don't believe at all in these machines. I've been saying for years we should be smashing the machines. So the fact that I'm in this position where I have to defend the results, I don't like. But here's the reality. This is what we have. This is what we had in the last election, the election before that, and we respected those results. So, and we also had Trump's guy saying this is the most secure election in the history of this country to this point. I'm still on the smash the machine kick. We should have none of these voting machines. And as I voted here in Pennsylvania on a piece of paper with a pen that I had at my house, we should be doing more of that.
And that was one of the things that I've been saying a lot is, as people complain about these voting machines, I'm like, gosh, if only there was a way that you could vote. Like, say you vote before the election, a couple weeks before, a couple days before, and you had like a piece of paper and a pen, and you could fill in a bubble. Wouldn't that be great? Gosh, what is that? Oh, is that vote by mail? Is that an advance ballot? Shucks, I say, shucks. And so yeah, I just am like, hey, guess what? You guys didn't want to vote by mail. Now you're complaining about the electronic voting machines, and it's like, just pick which one you're complaining about today. Everything is wrong. Everything is a catastrophe. And I'm just tired of it. Just get on with your life.
Do you think this? I've been asking people. Do you think this matters? Do you think this is Because I guess soon we're going to find out. I think Tuesday is the day that we hit 270 votes, electoral votes certified. December 14th is the day the electors, I guess, cast their votes, and then it's completely over. Does Trump leave? I mean, is he wandering around the White House on the 21st? Lost like a kid looking for his parents. How do you see this playing out? Does he get thrown off the White House tour?
I would love for Biden to be like, you know what? I'm not going to tell him he has to leave. I think that he's having a really hard time right
Bless
now.
his heart.
And I think we should all be sensitive to the fact that he's in a very fragile state. He's a very sad man. And we as a country need to come together to make him feel better about the fact that he lost. And if he needs to stay in the White House, then he can sleep in the kitchen, next to the freezer.
Where the ice cream is.
In it.
Yep.
And have all the scoops that he wants.
But we're going to give him a rag because he's going to have to clean up after himself.
Yeah. I mean, you could probably get a hose and just hose him down. Sometimes when you have a baby who's just a mess and you just decide you're going to this is why I don't have children. People should, whenever you're babysitting for somebody, they're just like, hey, there's this thing in this thing in the sink where you can just spray stuff. Just use it on the kid. That'll work.
It looks like a shower.
Totally.
But here's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of people, and I've had a couple of emails this past week from folks on both sides of the political divide, right and left, who are looking at what comes after, Joe Biden taking the oath of office and figuring out what to do with Trump. Does Biden's AG go after and try and prosecute? Does Biden consider pardoning him, as I've had some people say he should do? How do you see this playing out in the post-presidency world for Donald Trump?
So one of the things that I wrote about last night, Andrew Weissman was talking about this issue. Weissman served as one of the senior prosecutors for Robert Mueller. And the way that he described it is Biden isn't going to have a choice. Obviously, Biden doesn't want to. He wants his presidency to be about fixing all of these things and things that are good on television and, sound bites that are wonderful and bringing the country together and kumbaya and all of that. But the reality is, if Trump is not prosecuted, that's really going to screw up a whole lot of stuff in the Justice Department. It pretty much nullifies the idea of a special counsel. What's the point of having a special counsel if a president can get away with obstruction of justice, obstructing the investigation of the special counsel? I like the idea of appointing a special prosecutor that is outside the purview of the presidency, outside the purview of Congress. I think that's the smart way to do it. And it gets Biden away from being able to say, I got nothing to do with this. This is somebody else's investigation. We know that there are already, I think it's 2 or 3 civil lawsuits. There's the tax lawsuit. There's the New York Attorney General suit. The Manhattan District Attorney. There's something like 9 suits going on right now, I think. Some of them will probably get settled very quietly, the civil ones in particular, I'm sure. But, I think I agree with Weissman. I don't think Biden is going to have a choice. I think he can farm it out to the DOJ and have a prosecutor do whatever they want. He's still going to be seen as overseeing that. And so I agree with Renata that this needs to be probably a special prosecutor and have, try and just say, take Biden's hands off of it and, maybe just keep it as quiet as possible and let things play out.
Yeah, but do you think it could possibly be quiet? I mean, by going after him and having a special prosecutor, doesn't this just give him the ability to say he's the victim and really ramp up the rhetoric and ramp up the division in the country?
Well, if you remember, we didn't really know or understand what was going on with Robert Mueller for a really long time. I think any investigation from a special prosecutor would be similar to that, where we're going to have just tons and tons of investigations, lots of depositions, lots of discovery from electronics, probably some stuff that's being archived at the White House or shredded as we speak. And So I think that piece of it will give Biden probably, I would say, at least a year before things really kind of coalesce and a special prosecutor could have the stuff to start really bringing people into a proceeding and publicizing it. But, you know, if he can get a good year in, that second year is going to be all congressional races and Senate races. The third year, depending on if we won or not, that'll be a legislative year. And then we're into another presidential when Donald Trump is probably going to run again.
Right.
So,
yay. Such big fun.
this is where we are.
Well, before that, all that can happen, Joe Biden has to actually assume the office of the presidency, and the transition has to happen. And this Emily Murphy, the General Services Administrator, who still hasn't signed off on getting Biden the things that he needs to move forward, the financing, the money, the information, the coordination with the Trump team, if they're, if you want that coordination. Do you see that happening at some point? I mean, she claims she's having a breakdown. I guess people close to her have said she's kind of having a breakdown because she's just torn between actually doing her freaking job and, looking for her next job, I would guess.
Yeah, that's the thing is she's already started to put out some feelers for another job. And, I sneeze. Oh, sorry. Allergies. I'm okay. So Emily Murphy, she's already putting feelers out for another job. She's, I don't understand what she's torn between. She's torn between doing her job and not doing her job, slowing the country down, causing all of these problems, and doing the right thing. It's difficult, I think, sometimes for people to be able to stand up for what is right for America. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do as a public servant. She talked about it when she was being confirmed in front of the Senate in 2017. She talked about how, this idea of a higher calling and public service and how you're supposed to just, do the job that makes government run. And yet here she is completely just blowing it off. And if she's having a breakdown, it's one of her own making. This is her own fault. She's creating this entire catastrophe herself. It would be very, very easy to just sign the form. Granted, she's probably going to get canned after the fact, but really, you're going to be gone in a couple of weeks.
Exactly.
So you're going to have a better chance at getting a job if you do your job now. If she wants a job somewhere else after this, chances are, if you stand up for the country, you say this is the best thing for the country and I'm doing what's right for America, you're going to have a lot better chance at getting a job after this.
Yeah.
If you become this huge, this person who's all over the media for slowing down government, making the COVID transition worse, that's not really helpful at getting yourself another job.
I don't know.
Come on, Emily.
Because as you're laying this out, I'm starting to think about it going, that used to be how things used to work. That doing your job was something that was important. Doing your job and was something that people wanted. But we're now in the era of blind loyalty, where you gotta wonder if just plain blind loyalty and screw the country, do what the party and dear leader wants is not the path that she sees as forward. Getting her maybe a gig on Fox News or Newsmax or OAN or who knows what crazy Trump network comes after that. There's part of me that goes, that's the calculus. It's about the loyalty and proving, that she's a good Trumpkin, so that's the job she gets and not something she might actually have to work doing.
The thing is, a lot of these people who are going to be fighting for these jobs at Newsmax and Fox News, they're people who are in the media already. They're people who are on TV all the time already. They have a good background in communications and spin and all of that stuff. If Emily wants a job in some kind of Trumpkin media world, she's going to have to fight with a lot of people who are a lot better at it than she is. And so I don't see her being able to get a job in this Trumpy world unless it's going to be like running like the office manager for Trump TV, right? And she's got a pretty decent law degree. I would think she would want to do something other than checking people's time cards, but that's me.
There you go.
Maybe she gets paid well. I don't know.
We must get something. And finally, rumor has it Laura Trump is looking to run for Senate in 2022. Is this now going to be the future where, because Dad won something, all of the offspring now think that they're entitled to run for something? Is that what's coming next? Should I expect,
Yes.
Dumb Jr. to be running for something?
Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. Dumb Jr. already looked at Montana because he was spending a whole lot of time in Montana trying to think, okay, how can I be able to run for office in the state?
Yeah, him a cowboy. Yeah.
Right. It's just like, okay, so we're going from Manhattan
to Montana
to Missoula.
Same
and
letter.
You think that's going to play well? I mean, come on, dude. Like, one photo op with you looking concerned on a rock in a flannel shirt and cowboy boots is not going to get you anywhere. It's just not. Particularly in Montana. People actually know stuff there.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see. I think the thing with Laura Trump, I don't know how you say it. It misses some letters, some vowels. She's from North Carolina originally,
right.
And she went to, I think, North Carolina State University for a little bit before she went to Manhattan and got a degree in pastry making. There are no people in Congress or in the U.S. Senate who come from a pastry background. And I think, that could be represented.
She could bring cupcakes. I'm not against that.
Right? I mean, pastries are difficult. You try a good puff pastry. That can be hard. You got to get your egg wash just right for that stuff.
A flaky croissant.
Yeah. Yes, like trying to make that work perfectly. That's some skill.
But we would have to change the name. It could no longer be croissant. It's got to be like Freedom Biscuit or something.
Yes, brilliant, perfect.
There you go. Oh God, we're screwed. Lord help us. But Sarah, as always, so great talking with you. I appreciate you taking time. I love the work you do there at Raw Story. Keep it up. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at Raw Story. She truly is one of the amazing folks over there. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
We'll begin to get that fleet of petrol and diesel cars off the road, beginning what Boris Johnson would call an electric revolution here in Britain.
UK accelerates phase-out of gasoline cars to 2030. U.S. car makers knew 50 years ago that burning fossil fuels causes global warming and lied about it. Trump Interior Department allows states to veto federal conservation projects. Plus, San Francisco changes building codes to phase out polluting natural gas.
All of those phase outs and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We have the technology to do it. They certainly have the technology to do it in the United States of America, and you can do it whilst delivering hundreds of thousands of new green jobs at the same time.
Thanks, Boris. Man, do I wish the U.S. had a conservative party that wasn't insane. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I think you're kicking us off today with some very good news. Climate change, apparently, is over.
No, sadly, not at all.
What?
However, October 2020 was only the fourth warmest October ever recorded.
See, it was the fourth warmest. It is getting cooler. Everything is fine.
That's according to both NOAA and NASA, based on record keeping that began in the 1880s. But never fear, 2020 is still on track to clock in as one of the top 2 hottest years ever recorded, which is remarkable because there is a cooling La Nina weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean, and that has not slowed down 2020 at all.
Most of the years where we've had record heat, it's because we've had El Niños at the same time.
Right.
Now we have a La Nina cooling things down.
And it's not helping.
Oh.
In Washington, outgoing Trump Interior Secretary David Bernhardt has released a special secretarial order altering how the federal Land and Water Conservation Fund is administered. Permanent funding for the program was finally passed by a bipartisan Congress and touted by Trump on the campaign trail to boost his environmental credentials. But Bernhardt's new order now restricts the funding that's available for conservation projects and effectively allows states to veto public land purchases, which critics say undermines the very purpose of the fund.
So he did it just for the election, and now they're undoing it?
Yeah.
How unlike them.
However, the New York Times reports that President-elect Joe Biden's transition team includes dozens of climate change policy experts who are already drafting executive orders requiring that every federal agency, department, and program prepare to address climate change, and that they are gearing up to legally dismember Trump's rollbacks of climate and pollution regulations.
All I heard was dismembering and Trump.
In other news, U.S. automakers GM and Ford knew 50 years ago that car emissions cause dangerous man-made climate change. That's according to internal company documents obtained by E&E News. But instead of shifting their business models away from fossil fuels, the two car giants spent decades and millions of dollars lobbying to undermine efforts to reduce emissions, funding climate science denier front groups, blocking efforts in Congress to improve fuel efficiency and make vehicles cleaner, and they even doubled down on gas-guzzling trucks and SUVs. The revelations mirror similar investigations showing how ExxonMobil executives also knew decades ago that their product causes global warming and also lied to the public and blocked action.
So they've been lying to us for 50 years, and now that we know the truth, we got an entire Republican Party that is lying to us about them lying to us.
But Britain has had quite enough of that. This week, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the UK will move up its planned phase-out of internal combustion engine vehicles. Instead of the previous target of 2035, the UK will ban the sale of new gas and diesel cars starting in 2030.
Wow.
That is an ambitious timetable, according to Stephen Norman, managing director of Britain's Vauxhall Motors, in an interview with the BBC.
So, yes, it's a little bit tighter than we were expecting, but the plans are in place, obviously, to meet that, and meet it we're going to have to.
You mean they're just trying to meet it because they have to, because the government said so? They're not whining and complaining and filing lawsuits and trying to throw Boris Johnson out of his job?
Exactly.
I am so moving to the UK.
It's part of what Prime Minister Johnson is calling his Green Revolution, to revive Britain's economy and create jobs through innovation to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Finally, San Francisco is going all electric. This week, the city's Board of Supervisors voted to update building codes to eliminate fossil fuels in all new residential and commercial buildings beginning next June. New homes and businesses will run on all electric appliances, significantly reducing the city's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, reducing indoor air pollution, and removing the danger of natural gas explosions.
Nice. Let the lawsuits begin. I'm still moving to the UK for their green revolution. For much more on all of these reports and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So while the Trump administration, along with some Republican attorneys general, are attempting to destroy the Affordable Care Act in front of the Supreme Court, we're in the midst of the open enrollment period, which ends on December 15th. You wouldn't know it because I don't think the administration has done anything really to help promote the fact that if you don't have health insurance, if you're one of the people who lost it because of this pandemic, because you lost your job through no fault of your own or any reason, there's health insurance that is possibly gotten if you're in one of the states who, courageous enough to expand Medicaid, and one of those states who gives a rat's behind about your citizens. This is the open enrollment period, and here to share some thoughts on, how you get the coverage, what it could be, and why it's so important that we promote the fact that it's available. I've asked Josh Peck to come talk with us. Josh is the co-founder of Get America Covered. their website, getamericacovered.org. Josh, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So we're in this weird moment where you've got an administration who's actively seeking to destroy something that they're not promoting and have done everything they can possibly do over the last 4 years to destroy. I guess, are we surprised that they haven't tried to help folks enroll and get coverage that they're entitled to?
I wish I could be surprised these days. As you said, there hasn't been a television ad advertising healthcare.gov in almost 4 years now. That takes a toll.
So what it comes down to is folks like you starting organizations who get out and tell people about it, and I appreciate you taking time for us. So let's walk through it. I understand December 15th is the last day for the open enrollment, correct?
That's right. If you don't enroll by December 15th, you'll have to wait until next year's open enrollment period. So it's very, very important that you go to healthcare.gov and check out your options and enroll by December 15th.
And these are only in states that have expanded Medicaid and gone that route, correct?
So you can go to healthcare.gov regardless of what state you're in. If your state has something called a state-based marketplace, healthcare.gov will send you there. So you can sign up there. What's also great about healthcare.gov is whether you're eligible for marketplace coverage or Medicaid, it'll put you to the right place. In states that have expanded Medicaid, it'll basically automatically fill out your application. So healthcare.gov is really a one-stop shop for people to go to if they're looking for health insurance and are between 18 and 65 and don't have it.
Yeah. So then help us understand the states that may not have expanded Medicaid and those who have. What's the difference? Because I've heard a lot of people complain that, well, it's in my state it's really expensive. What's the difference?
No, you're exactly right to call that out. So in states like Florida and Texas, two of the biggest states that run their marketplaces through healthcare.gov, they haven't expanded Medicaid. That means that the tens of billions of dollars that these states would be getting over the next 10 years to help their lowest income citizens get free medical coverage, they have said no to. They've told the federal government to keep that money. And as a result, their existing Medicaid programs are in place. What that means in Florida and Texas is that, typically if you don't have dependents, if you aren't disabled, you aren't eligible for Medicaid. And so we're in this sort of crazy situation where people essentially their income is too low to get financial help. That, of course, is not how the Affordable Care Act was designed. It was designed to create seamless support across income levels so that it didn't matter whether you were very low income or you had a moderate income, but just were struggling to pay the high costs of health insurance in America.
And the goal, obviously, to make sure that every citizen has coverage in the moment when they get sick so that nobody goes without health care. And no one goes broke if they get sick or someone has an unfortunate accident, which has been our past. And I would argue, while not someone who thinks this was the complete answer, a step towards the right answer, ending people going broke because they got sick or their kid fell off a bike and broke an arm or a leg just seems like common sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like common sense to me. And, I'm right there with you in saying that I don't think this solves all of our problems. I think a lot of work is still needed. But, if fully implemented, it would make a huge difference in people's lives. And, one sort of positive note is that, while Medicaid expansion still hasn't happened in, I believe it's 11 states, there has been a very steady drumbeat of states and specifically citizens voting to expand Medicaid in their state. Often when their state leadership, was denying it, they were being overruled by people at the ballot box. So, that movement continues, and Medicaid expansion may continue to expand.
So when they go to healthcare.gov, there's a form they can fill out. Got to do this by December 15th to get into this open enrollment period. Are there any circumstances after the 15th by which someone could sign up? I mean, job loss, sick, anything that helps?
Yeah, there's something called special enrollment periods. Typically, these special enrollment periods require a qualifying life event. In theory, these qualifying life events are somewhat out of your control. Examples of them might be that if you lose your job and the health coverage that comes with it, you would have a special enrollment period that would allow you to get coverage outside of open enrollment. Other examples are moving, having a child, getting married. These kinds of sort of big life events often will qualify you.
And again, are there organizations, groups maybe like yours, if people have problems where they can have navigators? Because I know in the past, before the Trump administration, they had a number of organizations that would help you through the process if you caught a snag or if you weren't sure about things. I know those were funded by federal dollars. Do those still exist?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the outreach budget for healthcare.gov was cut by 90%. The assistance budget, these are for navigators and assisters, who don't make money getting people enrolled, but they assist them with that process. The budget for that was cut by 80%. So unfortunately, there's a lot less of that help available. That said, help is still available. You can call the healthcare.gov call center. There are trained professionals who work there, and that number is 1-800-318-2596. And you can talk to one of these representatives who will absolutely walk you through your application and help you through what can be a complicated process.
Now, can you share that number again?
I'd love to. 1-800-318-2596.
And we'll make sure that we get that number out so folks can use it if they need it through social media. And ultimately, healthcare.gov is the site that you'll want folks to go to. Now, your organization, the work that you do, you're the co-founder of Get America Covered. What is it that you guys do in this process outside of just coming on programs like this and sharing information?
Yeah, so I used to work at CMS, which is the government agency that runs healthcare.gov, as the chief marketing officer. And I oversaw a budget of $100 million to try and get out the word. When the Trump administration cut that budget by 90% after I had left, I was pretty devastated. And a former colleague of mine and we started this organization to try and help get out the word. Unfortunately, as a small nonprofit, there's really no chance for us to sort of fill the void left by those huge cuts. But what we can do is use the networks and work with local media to try and get out the word, and that is what we do. We also work with navigators, assisters, and brokers to help give them the best information they can have to when they're talking to people, when they're trying to do outreach in their communities and get people enrolled. In fact, just this morning, we launched an initiative called Get Covered 2021. And this is an effort that sort of recognizes that this is an extraordinary year where the coronavirus is wreaking incredible havoc. It's transforming society, and it has left more Americans without health coverage than ever before in history. More people have lost coverage in the last year than ever before in American history. And what we're promoting this year, in conjunction with a lot of pretty amazing organizations that are part of this initiative, is the idea that we want people to stay healthy, which means wear a mask, wash your hands, stay socially distanced from each other, but at the same time make sure you also have insurance, because that's actually part of the equation. Thanks to a law passed by Congress, every plan offered at healthcare.gov, and this is also true of Medicare and Medicaid, they're required to cover COVID testing. So getting insured is one of the ways that in this particular year you keep yourself safe, your family safe, and your community safe. And this initiative that we launched this morning has some just incredible organizations with huge memberships, like the American Medical Association, the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, as well as some, great unions like SEIU and other advocacy groups like the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and Families USA. So we are working with those organizations and their memberships to help get out the word, during this open enrollment period. And we're going to do a big push right before that December 15th deadline to make sure that people remember to get covered.
No, and excellent. And I wish you the best of this, and whatever we can do to help, most certainly we're willing to do, because this is, as you pointed out, in the middle of a global pandemic, literally ripping health insurance away from people in their hour of need is cruel. It's heartless. I argue criminal, but it's what's potentially going to happen. And as people continue to lose jobs and the insurance that our employer-based system has taken from them, there's got to be a place for them. And for me, this is one of those moments where we've been watching the popularity of the dreaded Obamacare get better and better and better as people take ownership of it and see its value and see that it's not the boogeyman that they were told or led to believe. And I hope that moving forward we'll actually improve on it, make it better, and make it what we want and need in the coming months and years.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the pieces of misinformation out there that I think we really try and deal with every day, because it's so important to anybody who is balancing a household budget, is how much does health insurance cost? And as we sort of mentioned here, financial health plays a key role in making health insurance affordable. As I think most people think, the cost of a good quality health plan is often hundreds of dollars a month. And for a lot of us, that is just more money than we can afford. But the purpose of the Affordable Care Act was sort of recognizing that these quality plans were out of reach for so many people, and it introduced these tax credits that help make it affordable. These tax credits aren't for people who are just who have very, very low incomes. They're often for people who have pretty mid-level household incomes. For example, a family of 4 with an income of as much as $100,000 is actually eligible for financial help. What's important about that is understanding how it changes what premiums people pay for health insurance. This year, 2 out of 3 healthcare.gov customers can find a plan with a monthly premium of $10 or less. 3 out of 4 can find one for $75 or less. It's really important. Normally these plans cost hundreds of dollars a month, but thanks to these tax credits, which are, they're built into the price, you don't have to pay this, back after the fact. These tax credits make this coverage just incredibly affordable for so many people. Yeah. And, what's staggering to me is that, over the last few years, over 4 million uninsured Americans were eligible for plans with a $0 monthly premium. Now, I want to be clear, these plans with $0 monthly premiums, they're not the best plans. These are typically they're bronze plans. They have higher deductibles, but they have $0 premiums. They come with a bunch of services that are in fact free, but what every one of those plans do is they protect you from the worst. They protect you if an accident happens or somebody in your family gets sick, or as we learned this year, if a pandemic hits. And that protection is incredibly valuable. It can protect you from bankruptcy, or it could just mean that you get coverage when some life-threatening disease hits you or your family and you need treatment. Yeah. So the thing I would just sort of strongly encourage people to do, even if you are on a razor-thin budget, is go to healthcare.gov, see what options are out there, because it's often much more affordable than you might think it is.
No, absolutely. And I've heard that story replicated time and time again, where what you pay $0 for, those are what we used to call catastrophic plans, where if you're dying, you got a heart attack, you're going to be okay. But if you skin your knee, well, you're on your own for that. There's room for that as well, but all of them have minimum coverages that I think are important and that we need to put forth. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I hit on is we're in this moment where as people become more desperate because we're losing another 742,000 first-time unemployment claims were just filed. I know a big portion of those folks are going to lose their health insurance. As folks have an option, we're going to have that bit of a safety net that are going to keep families from struggling. And look, I've met so many people over the years who credit the ACA with saving their lives because they were able to get insurance where they were never able to before because of pre-existing conditions or just because of the costs. So for me, while I do have some problems with it, I am absolutely on board with the fact that it has saved people's lives and will continue to do so, which is why I was dead set against the repeal nonsense without a replacement plan. And we should be fighting to keep this.
Totally agree.
Again, the website, keepamericacovered.org if you want more information on Josh's group, but also healthcare.gov. That's where you need to go. Josh, I appreciate the time. I wish you guys the best, and anything else we can do, please let me know.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good stuff. Josh Peck, like I said, co-founder of Get America Covered, getamericacovered.org, the website. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day that federal agents stormed the offices of the industrial workers of the world in New York City. They were looking for evidence connecting the organization to radical communists or anarchists. The ransacked office was part of the infamous Palmer raids, when Attorney General Alexander Palmer responded to the growing Red Scare hysteria by raiding the offices of leftist organizations and arresting thousands. Hundreds of immigrants to the United States were deported during the raids without legal due process. The 1917 Russian Revolution had stoked fears about a spreading communist threat. Newspaper headlines helped to drum up public panic. A week before the IWW raid, a headline on the front page of the Evening World, published in New York City, declared, "Reds in U.S. plotted revolution, deportation for all radicals." The day after the IWW raid, a Washington Post headline read, "Law to crush Reds." Writing in 1920, Attorney General Palmer warned, quote, "The chief appeal communism makes is to the worker. If they can lure the wage earner to join their own gang of thieves, if they can show him that he will be rich if he steals, so far they have succeeded in betraying him to their own criminal course." Palmer went on to describe how communists had, quote, "stirred discontent, caused irritating strikes, and infected our social ideas with the disease of their own minds and their unclean morals. Palmer's references to workers and irritating strikes demonstrate that he perceived the labor movement as part of the communist threat. Anti-communist hysteria took its toll on the most radical elements of the U.S. labor movement, especially the IWW.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Again, December 15th, the last day to sign up for healthcare.gov. And look, if you don't have health insurance, this is a great option. It really is, because as Josh pointed out, the plans, even if you just get the catastrophic plan, to where if you have a heart attack or something big happens, that you're going to have a high deductible, maybe $4,000 or $5,000 out of pocket, but it's going to cover the rest. It's well worth at least that. And it's one of those things that just blew my mind, that people would pay the penalty and complained about the penalty when they could have gotten insurance and they could have gotten the peace of mind that they're not going to lose everything that they've ever worked for in the event they get sick or they go broke. I mean, it's crazy But, look, we've got a Republican Party that's been throwing temper tantrums for years. This is not new. What Trump is doing right now, clearly not new, not unexpected. It is right in line with the very people. Don't make me get health insurance. How dare you want me to be personally responsible? How dare I should have to be responsible for my... Remember, these are the people who, they were the party of personal responsibility. In fact, the dreaded Obamacare, and this is one of those knocks that I've had against Obama, is he was a centrist, at best, a centrist Democrat leaning towards fairly liberal Republican. There was the time that he said he'd be an Eisenhower Republican. He certainly would be that. So he took the Republican plan, which was, the response to Hillary care, which was Romney care, and just brought it to the national level. Added a couple of little things, and then now it's the most socialist thing ever. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. How crazy we've gotten in just a very short period of time. What was the Heritage Foundation's plan? What was the conservative answer to Hillary's health care plan in the early 90s? What was the conservative personal responsibility, be responsible for yourself position, is now the most socialistic thing ever imagined. And it's going to destroy humanity because we've got socialism. Freaking nuts. And speaking of Mitt Romney, 17 minutes ago, Mittens tweeted out an image saying, having failed to make even a plausible case of widespread fraud or conspiracy before any court of law, the president has now resorted to overt pressure on state and local officials to subvert the will of the people and overturn the election. It is difficult to imagine a worse, more undemocratic action by a sitting American president. And good on you, Mittens, for saying it. Now, how about doing something about it? How about getting some of the other Republicans around you to do something? Now, I know it's never going to happen. How about threaten the caucus with the Democrats in the next session and wrestle the power away from Mitch McConnell? Never going to happen. But if you're really you're gonna stand up and make statements like this, how about backing it up with some action? How about doing something? And look, good on you for calling him out. But there's kind of been a pattern. Standing up looking like the tough guy, only to cower down the road. I still remember the speech from the Aspen Institute. I still remember, the whole Donald Trump's the worst human being ever, only to find you went talking about a job in the administration. So don't tell me, show me. Show me some action here. Show me something. Because ultimately something has to be done. Someone has to be accountable for these actions. I understand putting up a fight. I understand arguing your position vehemently. I get that. This is going beyond fighting the good fight. This is intentionally ripping us apart and sowing seeds of disinformation and division that are going to take decades and generations to undo. This is dangerous. We are in a dangerous moment in American history. And while we can have all the laughs over all the lawsuits that he's lost and all of the fact, the reality that the facts aren't on his side, the reality is there are people marching around who truly believe his BS, who have internalized the belief that he's telling them that they've won the election and it's been stolen from them. Reality check, Joe Biden's going to be the next president. That's going to happen. He won the majority of the votes by a lot. More than 6 million votes last time I saw. That's how we should be running our country. The person who gets the most votes wins. And oh, by the way, Joe Biden did get 306 electoral votes. There is that. Anyway, the CDC, lastly, the CDC is announcing that they do not want people, they're urging people to stay the hell home for Thanksgiving. I know. Shock. Don't go traveling where you don't have to. Don't be in large crowds. You social distance, wear your mask, do all that stuff. But, just stay home. And it's not a war on Thanksgiving. It's not a hatred of family. It's none of that stuff. Like I said with my friend Sarah, I said, we'll put a screen at the table and you can be with us virtually because this is what we have right now. Because I care about you. You care about me. We care about each other. We don't want each other to get sick because I want to make sure people are around for Christmas. I want people to be around to celebrate the new year where we regain our sanity, where we recapture our ability to actually get things and do big things and get them done. I'm looking forward to the new year with great optimism and hope. But we need you. We need you here. It's that simple. Anyway, we're going to be taking the whole week of Thanksgiving off, so I just want to throw that out as well. So we can enjoy the holiday as well. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go for the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.